a video about IFAKs and more or less kind of sort of basic first aid. So ladies, gentlemen, and my often forgotten, but never by me, 25 Limas, let's get into it. First off, this is my assistant today, Abby. She's been doing a lot with her group about first aid and IFAKs, and she's got quite a huge stockpile. So here in a little bit, she's going to be going on and talking about basically the multiple tiers of which you can build for yourself or purchase for yourself for IFAKs. First thing I want to talk about, though, is POU or philosophy of use for IFAKs and the multiple tiers. So why would you want to have an IFAK? So, a lot of folks, they like to have, all these guns and all this ammunition and all this cool gear and stuff like that. When you talk to them about what they have for first aid, they have almost nothing. I'm under the understanding that, if you have something in the means to put holes in people, you should also have the means to patch those holes up. Especially something that not a lot of people put thought into. If you're getting involved in gunfights and stuff like that, whether you're in a town or city or country format, you may not be able to just go to the hospital or the clinic or whatever. You may have to just patch yourself up. So having just a little tiny first aid kit, is good. It's excellent, but you may want to just add something more to that just to take care of yourself and those around you. So another thing I want to go over is building versus buying. So of course you can always buy IFAKs and first aid kits. You can absolutely do that. You can go to Walmart and buy your first aid kit. $10, $8, whatever. You can get just a real small one. Those are excellent to have. And Abby will be talking about those here in just a minute. But I also recommend just having that extra stuff to just take care of punctures and slashes and stuff like that. Bullet wounds, stab wounds, snake bites. Getting a puncture with just working in the woods, and you might get a puncture with a tree branch. Anything like that can happen. It's just good. It's excellent to have this kind of stuff on hand. So you can buy these things. You can also build them. I recommend building them. That way you have exactly what you want in them, and you're not wasting a lot of space in these, with extra band-aids and stuff like that. When, every day in your life you might, be more inclined to, getting some kind of actual trauma versus, just regular scrapes and bruises and stuff like that you might get around the house.
Yeah, because scrapes and cuts may not be the biggest issue that you have at the moment.
Right. So, for example, those of y'all that travel a lot, you might see a car wreck happen right in front of you. Well, you're not going to run to render aid to give them a Band-Aid. You might be more worried about running and rendering and giving them aid and, stabilizing their neck and stuff like that. Doing CPR and the various tools that you might need to give safe CPR for them as well as yourself. It's really, again, it's all about your POU or your philosophy of use. So one thing before I let Abby just do her thing and talk all about the tiers I want to go over is, within your IFAKs and your first aid kits, you want to really replace those components periodically throughout the year, and especially during the summertime. We live in the South. It gets quite hot. You might run into stuff like, let me just open this up real quick and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Here. So I've got alcohol swabs, and as you can see, just because of the heat from the sun beating down inside my truck, and this is an IFAK that I keep in my truck quite regularly, it's actually stained these, and it's actually made the alcohol bleed through the package. So this is something that I would want to replace, and of course alcohol swabs are extremely cheap. So just having a few of these in your bag and just swapping these out periodically throughout the months just it makes sense. So with that, I'm going to let Abby just take over, starting with I guess just the tier 0.
Yep.
All right, let's hear it.
So what you're going to come across the most is you're going to come across these basic first aid kits. These you can pick up for about $5 at any major retail store, major grocery store, but they're very basic. They have a crap ton of Band-Aids, gauze, they have a little bit of surgical tapes and antiseptic and a couple of finger splints, and that's about it. So you're going to take care of some scrapes, some minor cuts, and maybe a broken finger or two. Other than that, that's all you're getting out of this kit. As far as usefulness, say you are putting together bug out bags for your family and you decide you want each one of your kids to have a bag. This wouldn't be a bad idea to stick in one of your kids' bags. You know, obviously your kids aren't going to know advanced first aid procedures or anything, so but they should know how to put on a Band-Aid, how to clean up some blood, you know, something like that. That's what's going to be your level 0. That's going to be a toss away right there. That's going to be one of those that you don't put a whole lot of money into it, but it's there for your everyday use. You might keep one in your car, you might keep one in your home, throw one in a kid's bug out bag. The next one is going to be a little bit more advanced. This is what I would call a level 1. You're going to have a wrap bandage if you want it. Obviously, these I've built myself, so these are things that I've decided that I would want in different tiers of IFAKs. So in this one, you know, different from the store-bought kit, you're going to have an emergency blanket. Very important, you know, for our weather here in the Panhandle. It does get cold, but the wind is what will get you. So we get temperatures well below freezing, sometimes even below 0 with the wind chills, and if you're caught out in the cold, then this emergency blanket is going to come in very handy. Other than that, your toss-away kit doesn't include any pain meds in it. So you may want something that's got some aspirin in case of a heart attack. You may want something with some ibuprofen in it, or with some antacid if you suffer from heartburn. You may want something more than just some alcohol swabs and a Band-Aid. And that's where your level 1's going to come in handy as far as that goes. These are easy to put together. You're looking at probably about $10, maybe 15 if you don't buy in bulk. So moving on, a level 2. For myself, this would be something that I would put on a duty belt. Okay, I don't necessarily have room in this to put like a vented chest seal pack, but in this it's going to come with more stuff. I've put in mine, I've put some Celix Quick Clot powder in it. I've put some oral pain gel if you've got tooth problems and you're out and about and it's really bugging you. You don't want to have to stop what you're doing, or you need to eat and you've got tooth pain, a little bit of some pain gel in there. A buccal tourniquet. Again, this is not necessarily big enough to fit like a cat tourniquet per se, but having some sort of tourniquet is better than nothing. A face shield, CPR face shield. When Red spoke about the safety of the person you're giving first aid to or CPR to and your own safety, that's where this face shield's going to come in handy, because it'll lay across the face. You don't have to go directly skin to skin when giving CPR.
And that is something, I'm sorry, I'm going to interrupt real quickly. It is something that you need to take seriously in the 21st century. With COVID and all that, but also you got to think that there's a lot of places here in the United States that sexually transmitted diseases are prominent, and that those can be passed along orally, as well as things like hepatitis and AIDS and HIV and stuff like that. I mean, I always recommend if you can help somebody, help them, but if you have the ability to protect yourself from them, I absolutely 100% recommend that.
Also in my level 2, I've got earplugs. So you'd be surprised how many of these things you can get in bulk on Amazon for cheap. And I just throw a couple of these in my bag. You never know if you're out there in the gunfire. You've got this on your duty belt. You need some earplugs. You've got them in there. Liquid skin. Liquid skin's great. You don't have to carry 15,000 Band-Aids. A razor, a disposable razor. Keep one in here. It's great to be able to bandage someone. Doesn't stick so well if you're a little bit hairy.
Someone like me, for example, has an extremely hairy chest. If I was to get a puncture or gunshot wound or something like that, and somebody was to try to put a chest seal on me, it would be an absolute pain just because I have as much chest hair and back hair that I have. So having the ability to just quickly try to scrape as much of that hair away as you can with a quick disposable cheap razor, absolutely 100% helps.
I've also got a Sharpie in here. Say you come across someone needing first aid and you can't necessarily stay with that person. You've got a Sharpie. You can write down what kind of trauma they experienced. If they know their blood type, or if you know their blood type, you can put their blood type right there on them. You can just write it on their clothes, write it on their body. You can circle the puncture wound or bullet wound, whichever. Other than that, the only other thing in this that I put in here that's going to be different than most kits is going to be a venom extractor. Again, we live in the Texas Panhandle. We've got rattlesnakes. So having a venom extractor is going to be important. It's going to buy you a little bit more time until you can get to the hospital. So a kit like this, $45, that includes the pouch that you put it in, self-made. Maybe up to $55 if you don't buy bulk. Now the level 3 is going to have a lot more stuff in it. So the bag itself, this is what you call a rapid deployment bag. You may be at your job site, you may be at a relative's house, you may not be at your home where your plate carrier or your duty belt is. But you can throw this in your truck, and you can have this in case you get into some sort of firefight. You find yourself in the middle of the action, or another circumstance. You're out hunting, and you are miles and miles and miles away from the nearest hospital.
This is something that I've talked about in my previous videos. I call it a bailout bag because it just helps you bail yourself out of a bad situation.
This one's going to be able to take care of like bullet wounds, major respiratory issues, some dental repair, heavy blood loss. This kit, you can put one together for yourself for about $100 to $120. The bag itself, if you go looking on Amazon, is probably about $40. So that just kind of gives you an idea on cost. But something like this is going to contain your hyphen vented chest seal. Now this is a twin pack because if you have a bullet through and through, you're going to need one for the front and the back. It's going to contain a Dentec kit. Anyone with teeth problems know how important this is, just to be able to function, just to be able to eat your food. It's going to have a cat tourniquet. It's going to have shears for that cat tourniquet. It's going to have an emergency trauma bandage, otherwise known as an Israeli bandage, and you can kind of discuss how to put that on because...
So basically with an Israeli bandage or a similar style bandage, there's various brands, but they're all based on what's called the Israeli. Basically what it is you're going to put the gauze portion over the wound, obviously, and you're going to wrap it around. And then there's going to be a clip, and I'll show you a picture of what that clip looks like, of course. But you're going to put the ace or the stretchy part through that clip, and then go back on itself just to give added pressure, and then you can wrap it around. And there's various methods just depending on what generation or what style of Israeli bandage you get. But you might have the clips at the end, or you might have the Velcro at the end. But they're excellent to have. You can get them fairly inexpensively, under $20. I 100% recommend having at least one around somewhere.
So that bag, while I'm digging this out, I'll talk a little bit more about the bag itself. As you can see, it's got mag pouches all around it. Now this one I have used one of the mag pouches for the cat tourniquet.
I've got one too. They're excellent.
Yeah, they're great. What I'm digging out of the bag right now is going to be a nasopharyngeal airway. So when I said major respiratory issues, this was what I was talking about. In case you have someone that cannot breathe through their mouth necessarily, you can shove one of these bad boys down their nose and create an airway. Or say the nose and the mouth are not, it's not acceptable, then you can, and again, okay, I'm not a medical doctor. This is all based on research, a hobby, call it. I've taken an extreme interest in this stuff, so my imagination kind of runs wild with some of this stuff. So
what she's basically talking about is if you have extreme facial trauma, say for example you go right through the front windshield of a car or something like that, and you just physically can't put something like this in somebody's mouth or nose, you can puncture through their neck and put it through their neck, and that way at least they have some way to breathe. Now obviously you're going to try to use something sterile if possible. If you can't do that, sorry about your luck, but most people would actually be able to appreciate being able to breathe.
Right. The nasopharyngeal airways, they're a little expensive, as is, you know, the cat tourniquets, the chest seals, things like that, but they're totally worth it in case you come across a situation like that. The naso airways also come with a surgical lube to make it a little easier to put it in. And then last but not least, we've got the Elite Trauma Backpack. These bad boys come fully put together already. This is not something that I built myself. This was actually what we started with, my husband and I, when we got into prepping and, you know, just our interest in having a first aid kit that was going to cover a lot of stuff. We went ahead, hopped on Amazon and bought one of these, and if you get on there right now, they run about $200 to $250. Just depends. But it's going to have a little bit more than everything that you see here. It's going to have a neck brace for a broken neck. It's going to have a stethoscope. It's going to have a blood pressure cuff, sutures, all your surgical instruments, things like that, some cold packs, all of that. But at the same time, this may not be easily transferable from one place to another. So this would be more so if you are going to shelter in place. You know, your primary purpose is to be the doctor. It's great to have, but it's not ideal if you're going to be out in the action or out hunting or something like that. Mm-hmm. So
all right, that's what you got?
That's what I got.
All right, perfect. Thanks, Abby.
You're welcome.
So another thing that we want to talk about, and you know, is honestly Abby's idea, is honestly you want to try to teach your children young about first aid. You know, for example, like my daughter, she's 6 years old, and you know, she gets, you know, she runs into something, it's just a bruise. She thinks she needs to get a Band-Aid or something like that, which is cute, but you know, it's at that level when you can start teaching your children, you know, why you put a Band-Aid on something versus why you might ice something. You know, I 100% recommend teaching as many people as possible about medical first aid, carrying IFAKs and stuff like that. In the military, specifically the Army, I'm a combat lifesaver, or trained as a combat lifesaver, I should say. Army doctrine is combat troops, they want 1 in every 3 troops at least combat lifesaver certified. So that's basically, that is, you know, somebody that's between EMT and just basic first aid that you might get from like the American Red Cross. You know, for example, I know how to identify veins versus arteries, put in IVs, you know, suture wounds, stuff like that. I'm not a medical doctor by any means. I basically know how to keep somebody alive long enough to die in the emergency room. But, you know, in my personal belief is as many people as possible need to learn these skills. They're extremely simple skills to learn. You know, you can buy you know, a medical journal or medical handbook, and of course, you know, the first time you look at it, it's overwhelming, and you're like, oh man, how could I ever remember any of this? But a lot of it, especially with just a little bit of quizzing with your friends and family, you can learn a lot about it. And, a lot of stuff can be settled at home versus going to the hospital and being forced to, pay that kind of money. So another thing I want to go over before we finish is just having multiple kits to pass out. It's great if, say, everyone in your group or everyone in your family has various levels of medical training, but it's possible that if something was to happen and everyone was to, say, show up at your location, some of them may not come with all of their kit. So it's good to be able to just pass out certain things, between the level 0s to the level 2s and 3s. Hand those things out and have the ability to have those things just so that, you're not low on those things just in case something, of course, happens. Abby, anything else you want to add?
There's a couple of things that you might consider putting in your IFAK, and that just depends on your level of interest or your purpose for your IFAK or where it's going to be stored. And one of those things is the zip stitch bandages, okay? Those are a fantastic idea. You stick the bandage on both sides of the cuts, you pull the little zip tie, it seals it together. It's great. Getting your hands on one, though, is a little bit of a different story. Right now, I'm still waiting. I ordered probably 2 or 3 weeks ago, and I'm still waiting on those to come in. They shipped from overseas, but once they get here, it'll be great to put in the bags. Mm-hmm. Another thing are the hand pump respirators. Those look awesome on TV and movies. They look much smaller than they actually are in real life. If you order one, they're about $20, but they're huge. They're about this big because they have to have the capacity of an adult lung. Mm-hmm. So if that's something that you're interested in getting, just know that it is big. It's not something you're going to be able to easily put in a backpack. It may be something that you just throw in your closet and you have it mm-hmm. at your house in case your house is the shelter in place. It's the mm-hmm. rally point where everyone's going to be at. Other than that, the only thing I didn't go over was my level 1s. I do also include a styptic pencil. For different levels of blood clotting, this is going to be for your minor cuts. You could easily take your knife, scrape off some of the powder, some of the pencil, pack it into your wound. Say you're a heavy bleeder, so even the slightest scratch is going to make you bleed and bleed and bleed. This is something good to keep in your level 1 pack. Other than that, that's all I've got.
Perfect. Well, thanks, Abby.
You're welcome.
If you enjoyed this content, please give me a like, subscribe. Remember to ring the bell for further content in the future. And if you have any further questions or concerns, drop a comment in the comments. Thank you.